The stars burned brightly over the quiet world of Valthera, a planet far from the crowded systems of the galaxy. It was a cold, rocky place and few beings had ever visited. But it was here, hidden in a valley surrounded by black mountains, that the last dragon lived. His name was Aurelian Pyroclast, a dragon older than most civilizations, his scales like molten silver and gold. Once, dragons had ruled the skies of countless worlds. They had been feared, worshipped, and hunted. But now only Aurelian remained. The rest had vanished, leaving the galaxy to forget their power. Aurelian moved slowly over the valley floor. His wings, now heavy with age, dragged slightly against the stones. Time had dulled his fire, and his bones ached from centuries of flight. He did not care for glory or fear anymore. His life was ending and he had come to accept it. Around him, the wind whistled through the mountains, and the world was quiet except for the distant crackle of frozen streams. He had watched the galaxy from afar for many years. He had seen empires rise and fall, wars that scarred entire systems, and species that claimed to be strong but crumbled at the first real challenge. He had also watched the humans. They were small, fragile, and weak compared to most other species. Yet, there was something about them that drew his attention. They never gave up even when they had little chance of winning. They fought, they built, and they hoped in ways no other species did. That hope, that stubborn persistence, had stayed in his memory like a small, glowing ember. Now, as he lay on the cold stones of his valley, Aurelian's mind drifted to the humans. A small village existed on the other side of the mountains, and nearby, a baby had been born in the night. The dragon had felt it, a life so new and fragile that it seemed almost impossible it could survive the galaxy's dangers. But there was something different about this child, something that touched a part of the dragon he had almost forgotten. Hope. Aurelian had lived a long life and he had learned many things. Dragons had once tried to rule through power and fear. They had burned worlds, crushed enemies, and demanded obedience. Yet, after centuries of dominance, he had seen the cost. The galaxy had grown full of resentment and destruction, and dragons had vanished because of it. Now, as his own life slipped away, he knew that his fire could not be used to rule. It had to be used to protect, to preserve what was worth saving. He stretched his wings one last time, feeling the strain in every muscle. The cold night air burned in his lungs, and his heart thudded slowly, each beat a reminder that time was short. He looked down at the valley toward the small village hidden between the mountains. In the soft glow of dawn, he saw the tiny figure of a human infant, wrapped in a simple blanket. The baby's chest rose and fell with every breath, completely unaware of the dragon above, or the fate that would soon touch him. Aurelian lowered his massive head, his eyes softening. He could feel the spark of life within the child, fragile yet strong in its own way. It reminded him of his younger days when dragons were young and the galaxy was full of possibility. He had survived countless battles, countless challenges, yet nothing had impressed upon him hope like this simple human life. The dragon breathed in deeply, and a faint heat began to glow in his chest. His fire, though old, still had strength. But this time he would not use it to destroy. Instead he would pass it on. He pressed his snout gently to the blanket covering the baby. A single breath, warm and full of life, touched the child's forehead. Aurelian felt the fire flow from him, small and quiet but powerful. It would not burn. It would grow within the child, hidden until the moment it was truly needed. As the sun began to rise over Valthera, Aurelian lay down among the stones. His wings folded carefully around his body, and his eyes drifted closed. He was no longer concerned with enemies or survival. His task was done. The last dragon was dying, but he had left something behind that would change the galaxy in ways no one could yet imagine. In the quiet valley, the wind whispered through the mountains. The stars still shone in the distant sky, and the village below stirred to life. The baby slept peacefully, completely unaware of the dragon's passing. And far above, the galaxy continued on, never knowing that the last dragon had made a choice, leaving behind not a legacy of fear or power, but a spark of hope carried in a human child. Aurelian's final breath was calm and steady. His fire, the last of his kind, had passed into the tiny, fragile body of a human baby. And as his scales dimmed to silver dust under the morning sun, a promise lingered in the air. Though the dragons were gone, something of them would live on, quietly, through the courage and resilience of humanity. Elior grew quietly in the small village on Valthera. He was a bright child, with curious eyes that seemed older than his age. From the moment he could walk, he explored the rocky valleys, climbing over stones and watching the stars at night. The villagers liked him, though some whispered that he was strange. He seemed warmer than other children, and his energy never seemed to tire, even after long days of play. Doctors and scientists who visited Valthera noticed it too. His body was different. His heartbeat was steady, but it seemed stronger than normal. His skin stayed warm even when the wind was cold. He healed faster than other children from small cuts and bruises. No one could explain it, and no scanners or machines could find anything unusual. The villagers shrugged and called it a miracle, but Elior himself did not understand. Sometimes at night, Elior would wake from dreams that felt real. He saw bright, golden light and huge wings stretching across the sky. He heard a deep voice, strong and soft at the same time, whispering one word, "Endure." He did not know what it meant, but it filled him with courage even when he felt scared or tired. Other children feared the dark or the cold, but Elior faced them without worry. Something inside him always felt steady, like a small fire that never went out. Despite his differences, Elior lived a simple life. He helped his parents in the fields, carried water from the streams, and ran errands for the villagers. Everyone loved him for his kind heart and helpful nature. But sometimes, other children teased him. They said he was too strong, too warm, too strange. Elior never argued, he just smiled and kept going. Deep down he felt that he had a purpose, though he could not yet understand it. As he grew older, Elior noticed small things happening around him that seemed impossible. Once, during a cold winter, the village well froze over, making it hard for anyone to get water. When Elior leaned over to touch the ice, the frost melted and the water flowed freely again. No one saw him do it, but the villagers wondered how the ice had disappeared. Elior only shrugged. It felt natural to him, though he did not understand why. Another time, a fire started in the village bakery. The flames were small but strong enough to destroy the wooden walls. Elior ran in, not afraid, and touched the fire. The flames shivered and went out, leaving the bread warm but safe. The villagers gasped and stared at him, but Elior only smiled. "It's okay," he said simply. "Everything is fine." He felt the warmth inside him move outward, controlling the fire without harming anyone. He did not know it yet, but this was the dragon's fire within him waking for the first time. Despite these moments, life remained mostly normal. Elior went to school with other children, played by the streams, and explored the mountains. Yet he felt different. While others feared storms, he would watch the lightning and feel its energy. While others ran from danger, he would stand and look it in the eye. The whispers in his dreams grew stronger. Endure. Protect. Stand. He did not understand everything, but the words felt like a part of him, guiding him even when he was alone. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Elior climbed to the top of a high ridge. From there he could see the stars appear one by one. He felt a strange warmth in his chest, a quiet buzzing energy. He reached out with his hands almost without thinking, and the light of the first stars reflected on his palms. It felt as if the universe was listening, waiting for him. He realized somehow that he was not just a child like the others. Something more was inside him, something powerful but gentle, something meant to help, not harm. Elior did not know what he would do with this power. He only knew that it made him different, and that difference could not be hidden. He began to watch the world more carefully, noticing danger and need wherever it appeared. When a villager tripped and fell, his hands glowed faintly, and the person healed faster. When a small animal became trapped in the rocks, he could move the stones without touching them, freeing it safely. The fire inside him was quiet but alive, teaching him patience and care. Even as he grew, Elior remained humble. He never sought glory or attention. He helped quietly with a smile, and the villagers loved him for it. Yet he could feel the stirrings of something larger. The fire inside him seemed to hum, like it was waiting for a moment far beyond the small village, a moment when the world would need him in ways he could not imagine. And so, life continued, simple and quiet, with Elior growing into a boy who was strong, kind, and strange. He carried the dragon's fire unknowingly, hidden beneath his gentle smile. And every night as he lay beneath the stars, the whisper came again, "Endure." It was a promise and a warning, and Elior did not yet know that one day that fire would be needed to save more than just his village. It would be needed to save the galaxy itself. The galaxy was changing. Stars in distant systems began to flicker strangely, and energy grids that powered entire worlds failed without warning. Planets that had once thrived now faced shortages of light, heat, and resources. The oldest civilizations scrambled, trying to fix what they could. Scientists warned of disaster, while rulers argued and blamed one another. Yet one species remained underestimated: humans. Elior had grown taller, stronger, and wiser. He was no longer a small child, but a boy on the edge of youth. His fire remained quiet, hidden inside him, like a small ember waiting for wind. Most people in his village thought of him as unusual, but now he began to notice that humans across Valthera and nearby colonies were struggling more than any other species. They were small, fragile, and lacking advanced technology compared to other races, yet they continued to adapt, build, and survive against impossible odds. News from the stars reached Valthera. Other worlds were closing their doors, fearing human interference. Humanity was being left out of evacuation plans, left to fend for themselves while other species used advanced ships to escape unstable systems. Some humans fled anyway, building small vessels with what little they had. Elior watched these efforts, feeling a mix of fear and pride. Humanity was weak, yes, but they refused to give up. That stubbornness reminded him of the dragon's words he had once heard in dreams: endure. Then came the first test. A nearby star system, known for its massive energy reactors, began to collapse. It sent waves of unstable energy through space. Ships that approached were damaged or thrown off course. The other species panicked. Scientists said there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Humans tried to evacuate, but without advanced technology, their small vessels were no match for the energy surges. Elior felt a strange heat in his chest. At first he thought it was fear, but the warmth spread to his hands and feet. It was calm, steady, and strong. He remembered the small events in his village, melting ice, controlling fire, and realized something important. This was the dragon's fire, awake for the first time in a serious test. Without thinking, Elior ran toward a human evacuation station. The machinery around him was sparking and shaking violently. He reached out his hands and a faint golden light spread from him, touching the reactors. The sparks dimmed. The machine stilled. Energy that had threatened to explode flowed smoothly, as if an invisible hand had guided it. Workers froze in amazement. Humans who had been moments from panic now looked on in awe. Elior felt no fear, only calm. The fire inside him did exactly what it needed to do. News traveled fast. Aliens on nearby stations and ships began to notice the unusual stability around the small human station. Scanners could not explain it. Energy pulses that should have destroyed entire vessels slowed, systems stabilized, and small fires vanished. Elior did not understand fully what was happening, but he felt the dragon's purpose in him: protect, endure, and stand when others could not. As the days passed, the galaxy's crisis grew. More stars flickered, more systems threatened collapse. Humans were still underestimated, dismissed as weak and fragile. But wherever Elior went, systems he touched began to stabilize. Generators worked again, fires went out, and small vessels found safe passage through dangerous space. The other species started to notice, not with fear but with surprise. They had thought humans would fail, yet here was proof that persistence, courage, and determination could achieve the impossible. One evening, Elior stood on the deck of a small evacuation ship, watching the distant sun rise over a collapsing world. His hands glowed faintly in the dim light. A young human pilot, trembling from fear, looked at him. How are we still safe?" she asked. Elior smiled softly. "We endure," he said, almost as if repeating the dragon's voice. "That's all we need to do." The dragon's fire was no longer just warmth or strange energy. It had become a force that adapted to Elior's humanity. It did not destroy. It did not dominate. It preserved, it steadied, it gave courage to the weak. Humans, though small and unremarkable in the eyes of other species, were now capable of standing against challenges that even the greatest civilizations could not survive. Still, Elior knew this was only the beginning. The fire was strong, but the galaxy was larger and more dangerous than he had imagined. Many worlds were still in chaos, and the instability of the stars would not end quickly. He needed to learn how to control the fire completely, to understand its limits, and to prepare for moments when hope seemed impossible. He thought of Aurelian, the last dragon who had passed on this fire with a purpose. The dragon had chosen humans not for strength, not for power, but because they could endure. Elior closed his eyes as the ship sailed safely through the turbulence. He felt the fire in him pulse like a heartbeat, steady and strong. For the first time he understood the weight of the gift he had been given. It was more than warmth or light. It was hope, and with hope humanity could survive anything, even when all the stars seemed to be dying. And as he looked out over the galaxy, Elior whispered the word he had heard in dreams all his life: endure. The galaxy was testing humanity, but for the first time humans were ready, not because they were the strongest but because they were the ones who refused to give up. And somewhere deep inside him, the dragon's fire glowed, ready for whatever came next. Elior had been traveling between worlds for months, The galaxy was in chaos and many civilizations were struggling to survive. Everywhere he went, systems were failing, stars flickered, and energy grids were breaking down. Yet wherever he appeared, things began to stabilize. Machines worked again. Fires went out. Ships found safe paths through dangerous space. It was not magic and it was not technology, it was the dragon's fire flowing through him, quiet but strong. Despite his growing control, Elier still did not fully understand the fire inside him. It pulsed with power, but it also seemed to carry wisdom, like a voice that guided him in subtle ways. When he made decisions, they often succeeded even when he did not know how or why. And in the quiet moments when he was alone, he heard the familiar whisper, "Endure, protect, stand." One night, as Elier rested on the deck of a small ship traveling through a dangerous nebula, he saw a vision. A golden light filled the cabin, and before him appeared the image of a great dragon. Brilliant. The dragon's eyes were gentle, yet they held the weight of centuries. Elier could feel the warmth of the dragon's presence as if he were sitting beside him. "You have done well," the dragon's voice said, calm and deep. "You carry my fire not to destroy but to protect. You carry what my kind could not give the galaxy: endurance, patience, and hope. You are human and that is why I chose you. Not because of strength or speed but because of what humans do when all seems lost. You persist." Elier listened, awestruck. He realized that the dragon's fire was not just energy. It was guidance, wisdom, and purpose all in one. It was a test, a gift, and a responsibility. He had been given power but not for himself. It existed to protect others, to keep life and hope alive, even in the darkest times. "You must understand something," Aurelian continued. "Dragons ruled through power and fear and the galaxy suffered for it. We could have ended conflicts quickly, but we did not teach, we did not guide. Humanity is different. You endure not for power but for life. That is why the fire rests in you. That is why you will survive where others fail." Elier nodded, feeling a sense of clarity he had never felt before. The strange heat in his chest, the faint glow in his hands, it was not for control, not for domination. It was for care, for preservation. And it was not limitless. He could not use it recklessly or it would fade. It needed patience, focus, and understanding. In the days that followed, Elier tested the fire carefully. He guided starships through dangerous energy storms. He helped stabilize failing planets. He healed small machines and even prevented accidents that could have destroyed entire stations. Each time, the fire responded to his will, but always with a sense of balance. He could feel the dragon watching, guiding him silently, ensuring he learned to endure. The other species began to notice. Humans, once dismissed as weak and expendable, were now being seen in a new light. Ships that once feared human vessels now followed their lead. Leaders and scientists came to Elier for advice, even if they did not fully understand why a human boy could achieve what the greatest civilizations could not. And Elier always reminded them quietly, strength is not only in weapons or technology, it is in persistence, in courage, and in the willingness to act when others falter. One evening, Elier returned to a world where humanity had almost been lost. He watched as children played, as families worked together to rebuild, as hope returned to a place that had seen only fear. He realized then what the dragon had truly given him. The fire was not power, it was trust. Trust in humanity to endure, to protect, and to continue even when all else seemed hopeless. Elier's eyes lifted to the stars. The dragon's whispers filled his mind once more. Endure, protect, stand. And he understood, this was not the end of the dragon's lesson, but the beginning. He would carry the fire, teach others to survive, and remind the galaxy that strength comes not only from might, but from courage, hope, and perseverance. In the quiet moments, when the galaxy was calm for only a few hours, Elier could feel the fire inside him pulse softly, like a heartbeat of a being long gone but not forgotten. He smiled, knowing that one day humanity would not only survive the chaos of the stars, they would thrive. The dragon had chosen well. And somewhere in the distant reaches of space, though no one could see it, Aurelian's final gift glowed quietly in a human boy, ready for the challenges the galaxy would throw at him next. The dragon's fire was no longer a secret. It had become a promise. Humanity would endure because now they carried within them the courage of dragons, and the heart of a child who had never given up. Years passed and Elier grew into a young man. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have imagined. The stars that once flickered dangerously now shone steadily, the energy grids worked, and planets that had been on the edge of collapse were being rebuilt. The civilizations that had dismissed humans as weak were now watching carefully. Humanity had survived not because of advanced weapons or technology, but because of courage, hope, and the quiet guidance of one boy carrying the last dragon's fire. Elior traveled from world to world helping those in need. He did not seek fame or power. He moved quietly, his golden fire glowing faintly only when it was needed. Machines that would not work began to hum. Ships in danger found safe passage. Communities that were losing hope found strength to rebuild. And everywhere he went, people began to speak of the human guardian, a boy who had grown to carry the spirit of dragons in his heart. Despite all the changes, Elior remained humble. He remembered Aurelian's words, the dragon who had chosen him not for power, but because humanity endured when others gave up. The fire inside him had taught him patience, wisdom, and care. It was not something to use recklessly. It was a responsibility, a gift, and a promise. In time, humans began to take their place in the galaxy. Other species who had once doubted them came to ask for guidance. They learned from humanity's persistence, their ability to keep going even in the darkest times. Humans were no longer weak or expendable. They had endurance and they had heart. They had survived where the greatest civilizations had almost failed. And all of it began with one boy in the fire of a dragon. Elior often returned to Valthera, the quiet planet where it had all begun. He would stand on the ridge where he had watched the stars as a child and feel the wind on his face. The valley was quiet and the village had grown, but he remembered the small moments. The first time he melted ice, the first time he steadied fire. Each moment had been a step toward this larger purpose. He smiled softly, feeling the warmth of the dragon's gift pulsing inside him. One day children came to him, curious and wide-eyed. "Is it true," one asked, "that you carry the last dragon's fire?" Elior knelt down to look at them. "Yes," he said simply. "But it is not for me alone. It is for everyone who chooses to endure. If you are brave, kind, and persistent, it lives in you too." The children listened carefully, understanding more than they could say. They felt hope for the first time, a belief that even in difficult times they could make a difference. And in that moment, Elior realized the dragon's fire had done more than preserve life. It had inspired it. Humanity would not just survive, they would thrive, teaching courage and endurance to generations yet to come. Elior looked up at the stars, remembering Aurelian. He could almost feel the dragon's presence, quiet and proud. The fire had been a test, a gift, and a teacher. It had shown that the smallest and weakest could stand against impossible odds. The galaxy had learned that strength was not only in power, but in persistence, in hope, and in courage that refused to give up. Stories began to spread across the galaxy. Statues of dragons slowly faded, replaced by tales of humans who had carried the last fire. Poets and scholars wrote of Elior, of a boy who had been given a dragon's gift and had taught the galaxy to endure. Other species came to see humans not as weak, but as guardians of hope. Elior understood that the fire inside him would not last forever. One day it would pass completely to the hearts of humanity. But he also knew it did not need to burn in him alone. The dragon had chosen wisely. Humans had proven they could carry the light themselves, in small acts of courage, care, and persistence. And so the galaxy entered a new age. Wars became less common, not because weapons were stronger, but because civilizations learned to endure and understand one another. Disasters were met with ingenuity and hope rather than panic. Humanity, once dismissed as fragile, now led not by fear or force, but by resilience and the quiet courage of ordinary people who refused to give up. Elior returned one last time to the mountains of Valthera, standing on the ridge where he had first felt the dragon's gift. The stars sparkled above, steady and calm. He smiled, knowing that the fire was no longer his alone. It was the spirit of humanity itself. The last dragon had died, but his fire had not been lost. It lived on in the hearts of a species that refused to surrender to fear, chaos, or despair. And somewhere deep inside every human, a small ember of courage glowed quietly, waiting for the next challenge. A reminder that though dragons may fall, hope endures. Though the greatest powers may vanish, humanity continues. And the galaxy, once thought too vast and dangerous for them, had learned the truth. The fire of a dragon is strongest when it rests in the heart of those who refuse to give up. The last dragon had died, but humanity proved his fire never needed wings.